Hey everybody, John Delarose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction, talking about For Steam and Country Chapter 1. This is the commentary. I'm a couple days late on this, but it's been a pretty busy couple days, so I wanted to give everybody time to read that Chapter 1 or listen to it on my other video, which I'll link down in the description below, and talk about the first chapter here. It's a slow first chapter, and if you look at my modern writing that I write now, I usually start in some action, start a little further into the storyline, but I really wanted to develop Zara as a character who's a grounded farmer girl, who's actually a 16-year-old girl struggling to survive, orphaned. I put in every trope in the book there. Every trope in the book. That's pretty good. Anyway. In order to try to connect people with the character first, and then have them grounded in this environment where they're really not seeing much in terms of the supernatural. There's hints at it, of course. You'll see that there's the giant story that her mother used to tell her as a child, which comes back obviously as one of the biggest factors in not only the book, but the entire series as this goes along. And there's a hint of an airship traveling later, which we find out, if you start thinking about it, is not the airship that Zara is going to discover and fly upon, but is something that's being controlled by the enemy. And so these two things are very big in the first chapter. I love bringing stuff back later and having just like little details like that, that if you pay close attention, you're going to catch and have something really interesting to look forward to later. We introduce a lot of the main characters here. We got Zara, we got James, and we got their like little tense friend not friend relationship that's going on with that. We've got Toby the ferret, which is a fan favorite, Zara's little pet. I went with a ferret just because it seemed like a very odd choice, and you'll not have very many ferrets shown in fiction. And so the reasoning for that too is also it shows, I wanted to show, not just tell, that her father was bringing back exotic things for Zara as gifts when he came back from his adventures, and the ferret is supposed to represent one of those from a far off land or something like that, because they're not native to Rislandian lands. And then what else do we get? Mr. Dugearsmith and Talion get brought up. Talion ends up probably, gosh, she's the second most important character in this book. She's close to it. She does a lot, and I wanted to. I just love her arc. Her arc is very different than everybody else. I wanted to present somebody who's a stepmother figure, but different, and you'll see how that progresses as we get through the book here. She's also a foil to Zara. She's like the exact opposite of Zara. She came up by merit alone. She came up. She's a hardworking military officer. Well, and I wanted to show a contrast between that and what Zara is as she goes through this. And then Mr. Dugearsmith, I mentioned the word fancy several times in the description of the city folk. And that's very much a city versus country sort of mentality that Zara has. She's actually not resentful of the city because she's young and impressionable and doesn't quite understand the dynamics of what's going on, and really just only has this like vision of cities like Rislandia City because she's not really actually been there. And that's sort of the attitude we start with the book. So it's a lot of character stuff. The earthquakes obviously are very big for the plot, and you don't realize that till later, even though there's not a lot of action involved with that. There's a lot of reacting by Zara, which is all she can do at this point because she doesn't understand what's going on, and she doesn't have any capability to deal with any of this stuff, which will come later. Next, the other cool part about what we got here is you see the Von Monocle log at the beginning of it, where I read a little snippet of her father's tales and end with a little excerpt saying, this is the 6th year of King Malachi's reign or whatever. I wanted to add a little extra world building, add a little extra sense of adventure and panache to the books, because I knew that at the beginning of this book, there's not a lot going on for Zara in terms of that. And I wanted to just kind of expand the reader's minds a little bit, make them realize that there's something bigger out there. Zara just is about to encounter it, add a little to the tension of that. And I thought it really accomplished that. The actual logs in this book are out of order. They're kind of randomly placed, but they really tell the tale of her father and all the different adventures he's been on. It just gives like a brief snapshot of each of it. When I get into book 2, I actually have a very steady storyline that builds through those also, that ties into the main book, and book 3 does the same. I thought that was pretty useful, and you get a little sense of the world building with the king. This one is the 16th, and the 15th was assassinated. You'll find later in the book in one of the other excerpts. And the structure of the months is different. I believe there's 6 or 8 months per year, and they're divided up, I think, about 45 days each or something like that. And so it's a different world than our own. They have a different time measurement based on the legacy of their kings. And I thought that was pretty neat, and a neat way to kind of divide up eras and ages for the Rislandian world. And I think that's about it for this chapter. It's a very modest start, and I do that intentionally because I like to start the characters out at level 1, so that by book 4, which we're going to be coming out with in 2 days now, Zara will be a much higher level and able to deal with much bigger problems. And I don't want to blow the wad of the series too early, right? And I see that a lot with series, and you'll not see Zara saving the world yet, even in book 4. So there's going to be a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for progression, and that's the intention of all these books, so that it will stay interesting for you, the reader, through many books to come. All right, that's the commentary for chapter 1, and I will be back reading chapter 2 soon enough for you. And on Thursday, we'll have our nice release day. Hopefully we'll have a nice release party stream, and I hope you'll be there. See you.